Good evening. Will the Public Service Committee meeting of Monday, December the 16th, please come to order? Please note it is a special time, 4:30 p.m. First item on the agenda is approval of our minutes from our November the 18th meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Approve them.
Okay, any further discussion? Vote on the minutes. If you're approving the minutes, all signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The minutes of November the 18th have been approved. Okay. Get this done here. Next item on the agenda is public participation. If you're here talking about the property, if you want to wait, you're on the agenda a little bit later on, and we'll just have you speak at that point. If that's okay? All right. And then is there anything other than on the water discussion, the Hain property? Anybody else? Okay. We'll move on then to water updates.
Well, projects. So we have a couple that are getting wrapped up here in construction. One of them I mentioned last time. There's a water treatment plant project, and then we have a Wolf Avenue project that we just submitted the disbursement to OPWC. So we're just making progress on those. And for design projects, we have, I think I mentioned last time, there's a couple that are waiting for the budget the process to complete for us to start construction next year. That's the Tolbert Street, what we're calling the looping at the airport, and the PRV at Bird Street. So those are projects that are all going to be kicking off construction. The design's pretty much complete on those. And then a number of projects that are coming. We're kind of thinking about new design projects for this next year. A few of those that we're going to be discussing here as we kind of prioritizing those. There's a bulk water fill station that's proposed. There's some EP, some lead service work to remove some lead service lines. And then there's some additional improvements at the wastewater, the water treatment plant. Right now, one of the projects that's being finished up is this going on right now is this demonstration project to improve capacity. So the demonstration project is going on now for design, and then for the next year, you'll be looking at some sort of a next phase for that. So that's what I have on my list here.
Okay. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Next item under water is the water rate schedule updates or the change of this amendment here. Did you get any, you want to go ahead and talk about that, Mr. Testa?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently, we passed an ordinance that, Ordinance 24-145, that updated our water rates to reflect the 38% increase from our recent rate study. Picked up a question off of social media where somebody had mentioned, hey, looks like the rates on the city's website are a little bit different. So we added that rate schedule to our website, but I realized that we did not have every rate listed on here. So in particular, the rates along the top here and down the right-hand side, there are rates that we have in the two columns on the right that we have right now. They only apply to 3 customers, and actually the capacity charges only apply to 2 customers, a church and some office stuff, I think, for Ohio Edison. But I thought it made sense for us to have one schedule with everything on there, similar to what we do for the sewer rates. This schedule also added and specified the increase in the bulk water rate that we charge Medina County. So it's currently at basically, think of it as $3.73 a unit. Their 38% share, the same as everyone else's, would go to $5.15. I talked to the law department and suggested that we submit new legislation to amend the previous legislation. I'm not planning on introducing that tomorrow night, but rather at the first meeting in January. The one private entity on here that's affected by the out-of-city commercial rates, it's basically about an $8 a month change for them. And then the Medina County bulk water rate, they're assigned that commodity rate, but there's no capacity charge. So they ask of council is to do an amended ordinance that replaces the existing schedule with this schedule. Then I would replace the existing schedule that we just put up on our website with this schedule, because I think it's easier to read and it's complete. We have everything in one place, and we'll have that going forward.
So for ordinance number 24-145, it would just be an amendment to update Exhibit A, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the language itself,
Nothing changes in the...
Yeah, and basically the ordinance actually says just see Exhibit A, so the update would be to Exhibit A, and I don't know if the law department will change that language, but that's a little bit of the issue that I was struggling with. Is it doesn't really change, it just references a schedule.
Okay.
Can't the service director do that by 5423?
He can, but I wanted to bring it to...
Yeah, I mean, if we say it's okay,
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
why do you have to go through an ordinance or anything?
Yeah,
I
I
mean, I feel
Yeah,
the
I
service
just wanted to
director has
be
a right to
upfront.
do that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's fine with me. Just switch Exhibit A out. That's fine.
Okay.
And it gives you that authority to do it anyway, but regardless.
It does, and yeah, so, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Testa, for bringing
Yep.
that to our attention. I appreciate that very much.
That'd just be a lot less coverage.
Yes.
Oh, sure, and it can go up immediately, and,
Yep.
okay, all right.
Okay.
All right, no problem. Sounds good. Next item on the agenda then is the Hain property water discussion. If we want to start with, any public participation, if you want to go up to the podium and,
Just an open discussion?
yeah, let's keep it all to maybe, we'll ask a couple questions maybe back and forth here, but keep your side of it maybe to about 3 minutes. Okay? Ish? That's okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Michael Hain, I'm at 432 Meadow Creek Drive. Basically, the pamphlet I handed out was addressing the three main counterpoints to just basically any resident that's in the Wadsworth City, a township resident applying for city water. I thought they were all valid reasons to oppose it. I think last time we mainly talked about total annexation of the farm into the city. I hope we covered that well enough last time, and I think that the 40 or so participants that came in showed concerns about how that's a slow death for a farm and how the restrictions can lead to a difficulty in sustaining the farm. I have a strong belief that we can find other options that are outside of the fear of ultimate loss, restrictions, or development for the property to get a solution for a clean, reliable water source. I want to specifically address as it pertains to annexation for parceling off the property. This has always been an 85-ish acre farm that's always been in the family for the last 4 generations. We have triplets, so this is something we have to think about too, and we'll come to that problem, when they're older. But the farm has never been parceled off. We don't do that because we have a unified, cohesive effort of this property to make it work for everyone who lives there, which is my dad, my uncle, and hopefully soon to be my wife and I and our kids. A 5-acre parcel is not enough for any of the farm work that we have. On one of the pages you can see on there, I have a view of half of the farm acreage, and about 80% of that view contains livestock pastures, hog pastures and pens, chickens, fruit trees, gardens. There's honeybees on there, and a bunch of other activities that we do. When you raise livestock, you need a lot of free-range pasture. Single cow is 1.5 to 2 acres per year just for pasturing. That's not including hay and other things like that are needed in the wintertime. Parceling it for 5 acres with where the house location that we want to be at is not achievable. There's no access to any utilities. The common road that we share would have a very difficult access or easement, and it's right smack in the middle of the city, or right smack in the middle of the property. One of the exceptions that you guys had for city water was the fact that the person, which you guys claim that you don't do this, is surrounded by or township individuals. So if that person had annexed into the city, they would be completely surrounded and engulfed by township for access issues and other things like that, that you guys did not do that. If we parceled off a piece of this property, we would be in the exact same scenario. The other issue that that individual had, which I would address, is unsustainable clean water supply from their current well source. They did have a water supply on that property. It was damaged or dirty or whatever the issues were. We also have that. The third item on there is drill additional well and get expert advice. Very good. My wife and I both went to Ohio State. I'm an agricultural engineer. She's actually an ecological engineer, which is exactly pertaining to water and conservation of the environment, as well as a food engineer. My father has a dairy and cattle management degree, and my uncle has a forestry, fisheries, and wildlife. There is expert advice talked about in this pamphlet, but our personal advice and our personal expertise and our education is revolved around land management and water management. Our entire family is. It's both our passion, our hobby, and our professional careers. So you'll see some examples. I personally put in a 2 to 3 million gallon water treatment facility at a paper mill in Chattanooga. I engineered and designed it and did the entire install as well as the training on it, so I'm very familiar with it. That's actually all of Wadsworth City water use is the same amount that this system did. You can see examples of the water that we treated. On our farm, we also participate in sub-irrigation drainage. So we take our springs and our overflow from that, and we water our property, and we water our farm, or our gardens and everything else. There's examples in here. I hope when you guys read through this is not a standard city water or a standard township residence. We use up to 10 times as much as any other resident here does. So our wells are not sustaining it. We can get 80 to 100 gallons at a time, and we need some additional help and support. I don't even think multiple wells is going to cover what our issues are currently in order to sustain this property.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else you want to talk? Okay, all right. Shane, did you want to?
My notes also.
Oh.
Which might make it easier for me and you.
Okay, good. All right.
This is some pictures here.
Thanks, sir. Okay.
I apologize, only about 3 cents.
Thank you. You want to look over these? And I can share with you.
And we can share.
There you go.
Oh, thank you.
This up there for you to look at.
Oh, okay, yeah.
My name is John Hain. I'm the father of the previous speaker. All we're doing is seeking to tap into Wadsworth City water supply for new residents they want to build on the farm. That's all we're here for. We do have water lines all around the farm. We have a water line going through the farm, which has an easement. Easement's in that attachment I gave that has the pictures on front, toward the back of it. And easement says, includes the phrase, and other valuable considerations. So when we were paid for the easement, and other valuable considerations were written in there. There were no restrictions, and none were specified. This is both a sanitary sewer line and a water line that go through the farm on the same easement. We do have a spring. As Michael said, the front picture shows you what the spring looked like 30 days ago. We've had a very dry year. That is, you see the wet conditions with normally this time of year, that spring is around a 3-inch line. Discharge it out there. Right now, it's got a little bit of water in because we've had a little bit of rain. But that's supplying one house. It will not supply a second house. We do have a deep well on the farm. That water is questionable quality and questionable quantity. I've built up a 50-gallon or 100-gallon spray rig, and around 60 gallons run out of water, started cavitating. It will recover, but at 60 gallons, it starts cavitating. Any new well in the area is of questionable quality. This is coal country, as we all know. We don't know what the well would look like, what kind of water would come out of it. It's a crapshoot. Annexation, we've discussed this before. Annexation of this farm, or almost any farm, is a sure death of the farm. All the rules, restrictions, ordinances, and they change. You know, right now you can do this, well, we've changed that because of this, you know, they're all flexible. Annexation is the death of a farm. This isn't the first attempt. In 1979, a developer tried to annex our farm. The same year, the City of Wadsworth was looking for a park. There were 3 locations possible for a park, and one of them was ours. And 2 of them are now gone. And so there's still ours available. But we'll resist that one also. Michael discussed splitting it. Splitting it is really not an option to maintain it as a good farm. There are precedences. I found one on Hartman Road, and Michael mentioned it, where they got city water, they're in the township. There may be more. It's hard to find the first one. Wadsworth does provide trash service, they provide internet, provide electricity to the township and into Sharon Township. You know, they're providing all these other services into Sharon Township. These people do not pay city income tax for Wadsworth, do not pay Wadsworth school taxes in Sharon Center. They're getting Wadsworth city services. And some are getting water too up along Ridge Road through the Medina County Water District, some kind of a, now we just discussed here about the rates for them. So, but these people are not paying anything to Wadsworth unless they work in Wadsworth. We've been in the community, as that sign shows there. We were one of the 13 founding families in Wadsworth. That farm's been in our family for over 100 years. The Sylvia Beach home is on the same place where my house sits right now. That farm's an appealing entrance to the city of Wadsworth. People compliment us on that. We've contributed to the Wadsworth community in many ways. 4-H kids come there to learn things. We've had some animals raised there by 4-H kids. We're convenient for them. Local hunters come there. We have to be careful. Down at the library, you'll find 2 gold leaves with the Hain family name on it. We've contributed to this community for many years and still do. And likewise, the communities come back to help us. You saw the support we had 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, right here. When they wanted to annex us in 1979. Letters to the editor came in there, articles in the Plain Dealer, article in the How Farmer, supporting us. All we're asking for is a supply of city water. You know, we have a line going right through the farm with an easement that says other valuable considerations. It's a 100-year-old farm in Wadsworth Township. I think you want to keep it. Annexation's the death of a farm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from administration first?
We appreciate questions.
So I think I have a couple questions either from Michael or John just to answer. You know, I think I heard Michael talk about water for not just a residence, but for the farm. Is that correct? Yes. And John, I think you said that it's water only for a new resident. So just want to be clear what your request is for. Is it for
a new residence,
for a new residence only,
Yeah,
or are you going to supply farm water?
The goal is residents. Right now, we're barely able to get by with the uses that we do have. So we're watering fruit trees and stuff with the same well he's talking about, which is the 80 to 100 gallons. There's zero water to sustain any kind of residence or any kind of addition right now. So we're looking for, specifically for house water for the new residents.
For the new residents, not necessarily for the farming operation.
have to irrigate with it?
Okay.
No, yeah.
Just wanted to make sure I clarified and understood what we were
Yeah.
talking about there. So I think we've had some discussions about this particular topic. I know most recently in economic development and planning. I know that this item was placed on this committee's agenda at the time of the public hearing and discussion that we had at council. And so I think it was placed on there based upon it centering upon a request for water, if you will. But I want to make sure that we make it known from an administrative standpoint. I think the purpose of the underlying ordinance, if you will, was not necessarily a water service ordinance, but it was really an economic development issue. And the ordinance was a longstanding policy of the city not to provide water into the township before it was created sort of by law through the ordinance. And again, I think the protection is important. We hear a lot from the Haynes in the discussions, and I take them at their word that it is their intent to keep their farm within the family for years and years to come. And the protection that we would want to see happen, make sure that it stays a farm for years and years and years and years. One of the only tools that the city has to do that is to make sure that land which we provide water to comes into the city so that ultimately it can be controlled, if you will, if necessary even, through city-related ordinances and zoning, if you will. So in this particular situation, and in all situations, it's about economic development protections for the city. And I think more so than ever, we live in an interesting time in that for the longest time, township residents couldn't get access to water. But things are changing with the ability of Medina County bringing water to the township borders, if you will, at this point. It is important for the city to be able to protect our economic development interests through the limitation of services in which we provide. And that's the onus for the underlying ordinance. It's a protection of those who you represent, city residents. Certainly, I think this is a reasonable request, but it has concerns and is contrary to an ordinance which you all are duty-bound to uphold. I think the council does have options, and by that I mean you have the ability to look at ordinances and you have the ability to change ordinances. But is a change of this particular ordinance in the best interest of the city? I think that you're duty-bound to answer those particular questions. In addition, I would tell you the provision of water, while simple and understandable, could present some unique differences. And I think it's been brought up the particular area where council chose to do something different than what the ordinance had in it on Hartman Road. And my understanding of the facts and circumstances of that particular situation was that particular homeowner had a failing well, and that particular homeowner had water running very close to its property, and that parcel was not 85-ish acres, but a relatively small parcel that if any other well was dug, it was likely that they would run into similar issues. Here, we have an 85-ish acre parcel where you have an opportunity, taking Mr. Haynes at his word, and at his knowledge and experience, maybe they won't find good well water, but it's a much different situation than that particular homeowner who presented to you on Hartman Road. Very limited space in which to dig another well, very limited opportunity to find different water access there. Certainly different than an 85-acre parcel. I think it's important also to note that 85 undeveloped acres in the center of our community is much different than a small residential parcel on Hartman Road. I think that particular parcel and the addition or availability or access to city water there is a different economic concern, if you will, than the what-ifs if the Haynes Farms ever changed hands and the new owner decided to do something different in terms of those 85 acres. We can't allow an island of township within the city. And you should not permit that to occur due to reasons that we've talked about economically, planning-wise, zoning-wise. That presents some difficulties for the long term for the city. We've talked a little bit about the water tap and things on State Road. That has happened. That happened previous to this particular council, and it's been in existence for a long time. And we have an agreement with the county, and they do pay for those services in that regard. I think the concern, as this committee, I think well knows, annexation does not mean a change in use. I think the Haynes family controls that destiny. The city does not control that destiny. It's only the property owners who can make a decision as to what they want to use it for and how they use it. We don't control whether a housing development comes in or whether something else develops on that property. It's the family's decision, and all they've told us is that they'd like to continue using this in an agricultural use. So it's not the city that is going to change that use. It'd be the property owner's decision. And I think they've been clear, they don't want to change that use either. So it will remain in its agricultural use for as long as the Haynes family have an opportunity to control that property. Those are some of the initial standpoints and points of view that I think have been raised to date. Again, I think it's an economic development restriction more than it is a water service restriction.
The one thing that, and I see Mr. Kaiser's here, let's propose, let's say that if the Haynes property came into the city, annexed in, if the current ordinance of the 5 acres isn't sufficient, would we be able to create another zoning, a farmstead zoning of, 60 plus acres or whatever, to where they would be able to retain, we could guarantee them, because we have an annexation agreement now, with binding agreement we could do ahead of time, to where we could guarantee that they would have all the rights and privileges that they have now in the township once they're in the city. Is that possible?
Well, let me get to that.
Okay.
The 5 acre minimum, that's really not a zoning. That's not in the zoning code. That's in general ordinances.
Okay.
Okay, it's kind of one of those things when the city first adopted zoning and annexed in, there was a requirement that said, okay, if you're going to have farm animals, you need at least 5 acres. So it's really not part of the zoning code. Okay. But going back to your question, yeah, I'd like to address something I heard here this evening and offer a potential solution. And that was that, well, annexation is the death knell to farms. And I would disagree with that. I think it could be the death knell, depending on how you zone it. And with that, I'm going to ask you to think back to this past February. We had Wendy Muller in to give a kind of a presentation on annexation and post-annexation zoning and what to do. And if you remember, there were 3 options. First of all, the township has already zoned the property. I believe it's R1 township zone. So they use the same numbering system as we do, but it means something different. So I think right now, if they so chose, the family could divide that into 2 acre parcels. Okay, they obviously don't want to do that. But when zoned land comes into the city, it retains the zoning it had in the township. And if you remember, Wendy did mention that if you have no plans for it, you can leave that township zoning in place for as long as you want. Okay? Might be a short-term solution. Second-term solution is that you ultimately take that property and assign it one of the city's existing zoning classifications. I think if you do that, then I think we have the problem that was alluded to, that could be a death knell to the farm. The third option she mentioned, and I think this is the solution, is she said if you have some uses that you're bringing in and you don't have a current zoning classification that allows it, create one. So I don't see any reason why there couldn't be some type of agricultural / farmstead zoning district put in place. It hasn't happened because most people annex property to have it developed, to subdivide it and develop it, okay? Right now, I think that's probably the best solution because you can actually design it. It can be part of the pre-annexation development agreement, what you're gonna allow and what you want. And if the Haynes family wants to keep it in at the property in use as a farm, they can actually do that today through conservation easements. That's not something that we control, we're the township, but that can be done. But anyhow, I think that annexation does not have to be the death knell to the farm.
And I know Mr. Proudfoot's not here too. I think the only thing that we couldn't cover, and correct me if I'm wrong because it's an ordinance, would be the firearm, discharging a firearm. And again, this would be a law question. Maybe it'd be a possibility in our ordinance discharging a firearm in the city with the specification of if you're in the farmstead zoning of 60 acres plus, they could even retain that right. I mean, we could look at it. I don't know if that could be done, but if that's the case, we could. It sounds like we could they could keep all the rights and privileges that they have now once they're in the city.
Yeah, I don't want to step on any toes. That's a public safety
right. That's right.
Not part of the zoning. But think about it. Why would the city enact something like that? My answer to that is probably because when 80% of your building lots are less than half an acre, it makes sense to have some kind of regulation in place not to discharge firearms, since bullets and shot don't respect property lines. Those are pretty tight properties. Just outside the city, obviously, is the Hunt Club, and I recently looked at that.
About 30?
About 30 acres, just shy, like 29.96. So there's a 30-acre parcel. Yes, it's in the township. It's kind of narrow, so I do believe they kind of shoot on the east-west axis. I think starting west, shooting east. You know, that I think is something that the safety and council could consider to modify that, because there's a few properties still here in town that are well over 50 or 60 acres that aren't really developed. And maybe it would be suitable, but again, I don't want to throw someone under the bus or speak for someone else, but it's a conversation for another day.
Okay. May I ask a question? Mr. Kaiser, you alluded to 2 acres for the Wadsworth Township. Is that the minimum lot size in the township?
I believe typically 2 acres if you don't have sewer or water.
Okay, yes,
water.
that's what I'm indicating. Okay,
Yeah.
And then do they allow back lots in the township, do you know?
Township does allow what I think is called flag lots. So
Okay.
you can have like a 20-foot street frontage and you
That
go
was
back
my
100
next
feet.
question. In fact, what is the frontage? Is it, do you know what the frontage is at 40 feet or 20?
I don't know.
Don't know? Okay. And so, the township requires 2 acres with a minimum amount of frontage, okay? If it was just zoned residential, because we're looking at a residential house, not, the farm is separate from what we're considering. What is the minimum lot size? Is it a 1/3 acre, a 1/4 acre, a 1/2 acre for the city of Wadsworth?
It depends on what city zoning districts attach to it.
Okay.
So it can range anywhere from 9,000 square feet in an
Okay.
R1 district to over 1/2 an acre in a state residential. But that's what I mean. The current zoning regulations, I don't think, are really suited to what they're trying to do. And I think that's why some type of farmstead/agricultural use district that, again, that we talk to the owner, what do you want to do? How do you want to preserve this? Or in the future, if you want to add homes to it, where do you want to add it? And figure out from there how to go about and do it.
And the current minimum frontage for a city lot?
Again, changes by zoning district, but anywhere from, I would say, 50 feet to 100.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, and no, one last thing. They have asked about water. What about sewer, if they wanted sewer?
I believe sewer is available outside of the city boundaries.
Okay.
Okay, but really, water is a different animal because that controls pretty much economic development. I guess, I wasn't here last Monday, I guess that was discussed, but I think what I've told people is take a look at what happened to Medina. They provided all of their facilities outside their boundaries, and they're kind of trapped. A lot of the stuff you see that you think of as Medina is actually in one of the adjacent townships.
Okay. Okay, thank you for those answers.
Mr. Davis?
I'd like to ask one clarifying question on your handout. This is really speaking of spring water.
Yes.
I have experience for residential well water a resident can survive on very low flows of well water with some sort of pressure tank. So you have a trickle flow into a tank with pretty low source water. Have you looked into that as an option?
We have not, but there's treatments too. I mean, it takes ancillary treatments as well for biological and other foulings for having a surge tank like that. It's additional cost, but no, not specifically.
Okay, it's similar to what you would see in a normal township well-served parcel.
Sure.
So, okay, so because that's just, I didn't see the well discussion here, I just saw the spring discussion here, so I just want to make sure that was what you would consider.
Yeah, they're all tied in because they're all the same, it's all the same property, it's all the same water sources. So, being that we have to supply it internally. The 2,000 gallons on this that we use in the summertime, those come from a multitude of sources that we use and stretch out. So another resident adds another, whatever, 300, 500 gallons on top of that daily use in the summertime. So they're all, I mean, we have different transfer lines going from a spring at the house if we do have water versus a well, because they dry up or the well's having a hard time. So we share when we can on different sources, specifically a lot of times for livestock.
Sure, okay, thank you.
If you want to clarify that, also, I put the systems in. The deep well is variable speed pump. So really, there's no storage, but maintains 80 psi whenever there's water there. I can have a drip, and it'll still at 80 psi. The spring goes into a bladder type pressure tank that holds probably 2 or 3, it's a modern pressure tank, 2 or 3 gallons of water is what it holds. And, you know, if I flush a toilet, it runs 2 times, the pump does. It keeps the bladder. You turn the faucet on for a minute, or a short half minute, it doesn't come on. There are different types of systems. Again, one's variable speed, which is the deep well, and the spring is a standard old pressure system like you're talking about. If the water sits too long in a big tank, I've experienced this in California, it grows stuff.
When you say deep well, how deep are you talking about?
107 feet.
Okay.
Just a standard question, do we get any ability to address some of the things that you guys have talked about towards the end too?
Yeah, I mean, you need some of the extra,
Yeah, the zoning stuff.
Sure, go ahead.
So, we actually this year talked about a conservation easement on the property. I didn't want to address that. My wife and I are very much opposed to that. It limits your use of the property. So if we want to do ATVs or something for kids, completely not usable. It's not a sustainable land practice with treading and everything else. It does dictate a lot of the stuff that you can do on your property, which you can and can't do. It's extremely restrictive when you want to use it how you best are managing it. Swales that we're putting in place to control drainage into different neighborhoods, completely restricted unless you have very specific ways about going about doing it, or you put it into your conservation easement up front. You're modifying the land. You are doing that which is against the conservation easement. That's really difficult as a farm family to do that, to give your control of your property to somebody else to dictate what you can and can't do. That's probably part of our concern with annexation into the city too. So we had a lot of neighbors here for support. We had a neighbor, a single neighbor, that's complaining about firearms, dust, when we're doing any kind of agricultural use, noise, anything outside of different hours or annexations or noise complaint issues, because we're right up against everyone, like you said. That takes a complaint that already has precedent, already has stipulations in place to not do those activities. That then applies to us. So if we can't use the farm as a farm with very specific city ordinances in place because of those and because they are restrictive, or because of new ordinances that can go into effect, that drastically will reduce our ability to use that property. When we lose our ability to have CAUV and use it as an agricultural property, our property taxes will skyrocket. When those skyrocket, this is how you have the death of a farm. When those skyrocket, they become completely unsustainable. We're living off of income supporting 3 kids and a farm of 85 acres is a lot of money. We got $24,000 of fencing. When you start paying additional property taxes for land that you can't have an ag use on, we have a $325,000 combine for doing the crops. You lose that farm. That's how you lose the farm. So we have to be creative in our lifetime in order to still continue to use that as a farm and have ag use there so that we don't. And that's getting more and more difficult. One last comment I'd like to make. We talk about ordinances and changing everything in very specific ways. I appreciate your feedback on that. Why don't you guys put something in place where you say, hey, you're in the township, you have offered a very good example of why you need city water. There's a $5,000 tap-in fee. There's an $8,000 tap-in fee, and your rates are double or 1.5 times or something. You guys can figure out a solution that's actually economical to the city of Wadsworth, way more than just us tapping into the city right now. I pay Akron city income taxes 2.5%. You guys won't get much out of me at city income tax. For your infrastructure, that example that you guys could put in place would benefit us. We're going to have to put a well in. It would also benefit you guys in your treatment plants and your expansions and everything you want to do in the future. And you guys have the ability to change rates, which would way more benefit your guys' financials than one property. So there's other options that I would find way easier in your position and more economical than just a restriction of a farm for a 1.4% income tax that I wouldn't even pay.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. And again, we'll take everything under consideration, I think, and maybe Mr. Kaiser, some of the points that he brought up, we'll see how we can.
I'd like to speak.
Go ahead.
If you don't
Oh,
mind.
yeah.
I did quite a bit of research on this subject matter, and I found that in 2019, we authorized 7919 Ridge Road it's a township property, to receive water. And going back through the minutes from that meeting, I see that there's another additional 10 houses on Ridge Road that's receiving city water that's in the township. Okay, so that's 11 now. In 2023, we passed ordinance number 087 for the property on Hartman Road that Mr. Hiscott referenced. So, I mean, why are we so against helping these people? I mean, we've done it, and it's in the minutes. I mean, they're here if you want to see them, okay? It just doesn't make sense to me to keep kicking this horse when we don't need to be kicking it. We've done it before. This council has done it. Okay? That's what I want to say.
One thing myself, I was hearing everything, and I just wanted to mention a couple things. I think, first of all, I'm not aware of what you were mentioning, so I'll need to look into that. Mr.
Would you like to see this?
Not this moment, but I'll look at it later. But one of the things I was thinking, and it's been brought up a little bit, is now the way that annexations are done is there's an annexation agreement that is put into place that is acceptable to both parties, because obviously with an annexation, there's two different parties, and they both are, you know, you're wanting a service, and then there's an agreement with that. Because to me, what I'm reading in your paper, but also I'm hearing is that there's concern that the city puts on restrictions and so forth, and you want to just farm. You want to be able to use your property just like you're using it today. And as I've told you before, is that I have great interest in making sure that you have that ability to be able to do that not only today, but for generations and generations to come. That is your desire, and nobody has the ability to change that unless you were to sell that property or to make a decision in the future to change that. So you are the ones that make a decision on the destiny of your property. And so to me, if there is a way to basically put together an agreement that is acceptable to you, because you don't want, I mean, if I were sitting, I'm hearing a little bit in that, you know, you're asking only for one property. But what's to say in another generation when you have your triplets that you want to have another home and another home. And so it's not a long-term situation. Or let's say that there is a failure of some sort, that you're just not getting the production out of your well that you need to have, coming in at a future date. You don't want to go through this again and say, City Council, because we're going to be new people here. I mean, maybe 5, 10, and you don't want to go through this. You want to have a long-term situation. And I can see a long-term situation where you are annexed into the city, but you have some sort of a zoning which is agreed upon, and it is an agreement that provides you protection that basically allows you to use your farm as you are using it today. And that's your protection. Because quite frankly, the township has the ability to pass legislation to change something today. It's not just any sort of legislative body has that ability. But if you have an agreement that's in place, that provides you with some protections. And so to me, I would think that you would want to have a long-term situation that is going to provide you with water, not just for your one property, but you would have access to water to provide you for your family and to your farm. But it's just not a Band-Aid that helps us today. It's a Band-Aid to help us in the future. And I want to help you to be able to have a long-term solution for your farm, to be able to to be able to utilize your farm not only today but in the future, and that you don't have to come back to this body in the future because something else the well doesn't work in the future. But to me, I think that's could be some good marching orders on our end is to start working on some sort of an agreement of some sort with you, and whoever would want to do that, but to start to figure out what does that look like. Because you have some privileges and benefits as you are enjoying them today. It's not going to, just because it's annexed and changed, if somebody driving past isn't going to notice, like, oh, all of a sudden it's in the city. You're going to function just the same as you are today, but you want some of those protections, and I understand that. And I think that we can figure out an agreement to be able to make that.
Any other comments from council?
I have a problem with the word agreement. Ask the American Indian. These agreements are ironclad today, tomorrow's a different day. Ask the American Indian.
You say annexation for support of the city infrastructure. What's the reason for the annexation specifically? Is it a cost basis reason, or is it a future development reason?
It is not a cost-based reason, like you talk about economics and
Sure.
That's not, we've never been in it for the money aspect of it. That's why it's not a water reason. It's the development reason. But do you know the border between Medina Township and the city of Medina?
No.
Because I bet you think the city of Medina includes what's developed in Medina Township. And that is a direct result of them not having an ordinance like this. So they lost out on all of that development opportunity because they provided water into the township that surrounded them. It not only landlocked the city, but it prevented the city from benefiting from any of that development potential. You are not going to develop your property.
Yeah, it's also not landlocking you from anyone else either.
Well,
We're surrounded completely by city infrastructure. There's no path that we would be blocking from you ever getting to. And it goes through the farm.
No, it's not a pathway when you talk about development. It's developing the township within the city, as you said, surrounded by the city. Is that good development practice or is that poor development practice?
Development practice for what? To put a park in? Put a school in?
No, we asked to put a fire station there. You said no. The park, you said no to.
Do you know how that's
So
easier to
we're
do?
not looking to use your farm for anything.
Currently, correct, yes. Eminent domain, you guys talk about the only way that we're gonna have that farm not be a farm is us. There's eminent domain too. Not having it a part of the city is way easier to fight on eminent domain than if you're already annexed into the city. So it's not just on us. That's how we're gonna lose this farm, by the way.
Well, we're not looking to eminent domains, so that's never been a part of this discussion. I'm not certain what it is. Those folks would have the decision to make on eminent domain matters. We're not looking to do that. I think that's muddying the discussion we're having about your request for water on the farm?
I mean, I think it involves our decision to annex into the city. It makes
Your
it,
fear
you
of
say development.
eminent, your fear of eminent domain, Doug?
If we are annexed into the city, it makes us a bigger target and easier target for use outside of our farm by eminent domain, definitely.
I'm not sure where that's coming from, but okay. I don't think the city has a track record of large expanses of recent time where we use eminent domain to acquire lands.
I guess I'm confused on the huge desire for the city and this council and everyone in the room to have the property annexed, even though it still exists and we already participate in all the services, fiber, electric, every other service. But why can't we participate in the city water service outside of that, outside of annexing? I'm really confused on that, especially when you start putting in the economics of a tap-in fee and additional water and everything else. We're paying for the bill. We'd be paying for the bill. That's, I guess, really confusing, but.
Well,
The issue you gentlemen have, and I apologize again, that you may have brought three of them. Like the third or fourth line down, it says how these agreements are, and it says, and other valuable considerations. Nowhere does it say restricted to this, or and allows this.
And I have asked the law director for interpretation of what that means in accordance with your annexation or agreement. Easement.
Mayor, you want?
So I'll just mention one, to answer your question, is one of the things that so for example, you have water. Annexation is actually a protection also for the city, and it goes back to that agreement that I was telling you about. Let's say we don't have a crystal ball. Let's say your triplets move away, and over time you're just, we're not going to be farming. We're tired. This is just not something that we want to do. But you have access to water, and you have the ability, because you own that property, then to sell it to a developer, to whoever that you want. They now have that ability to develop it as they want, and if you're in the township, it's developed in the township. And the city has no ability to have any weigh-in on that, and they won't benefit from that because it's in the township. So it provides a protection to the city, and that's what was mentioned before, is that when the property is not annexed, the city has no future benefit from it. And what you're recommending is that, yes, there is a benefit from water cells, but that's a small portion of really what it takes to run a city, from the services and total things that are received. I would dare say that your family, in fact, I know, because I know your dad was used the senior center, is that there's a benefit of things that are outside of the costs of the utilities, of the enterprise funds. And we provide that, and certainly people outside of the city come, and we want them to use that. But I'm just saying that there are additional costs outside of just the utilities. But I go back to that agreement. If we can reach some sort of agreement that you're able to utilize your farm just like it is today, and that's an agreement between the city and you all, then you're able to continue your farm as long as you want. But certainly annexation, that's a decision upon you. You would have to say to us, we want to annex this. We're not saying you have to annex. We're saying we're trying to provide an opportunity. How can we provide you water within our ordinances and with our practices? That practice and that ordinance was put into place many years ago for a reason, and very few exceptions, but it was put in there for a reason. And that is to make sure that there's proper development, but it's also a fairness type of a situation. And you mentioned you work outside of the city, and very little. And it's not like the city's looking and, oh goodness, we're going to get an extra few dollars here. But it's what, you have a large plot of land. It's not just an acre lot. This is 85 acres we're talking about. And so, as I said, we're just trying to come up with an idea that we can help you to utilize your farm on a long-term basis and not just provide you with something that's going to be a Band-Aid, but something that's going to provide something for your farm for long-term, and that you'll be able to, because I would say, if you're saying correctly, maybe in, I don't know how many years, but so many years that might be another issue for you, is, that water. And you don't want to be.
Put the agreement on the meter instead of the property. It's hard to make a development on a 3/4 inch pipe with a meter for a single house, but you can put an agreement on the meter, not the property.
The agreement is for the property itself, the whole entire property, that you would make a decision as far as, to me, I think, why don't we just try to give it a chance, give it a look, to see if there's something that we can do to give you a comfort level. Because what I'm hearing is that you're concerned with the restrictions, and what I'm hearing is that those restrictions are not going to be there. But we want to make sure that you don't feel as if there's any restrictions, or we're not aware of a restriction that you might have a particular concern about. But we can't get to that point unless we start working together to figure this one out.
Sure. I also know that I can go everything up front too.
Understand, but I think we both, I'm on record, you're on record, that we're both trying to come to some sort of a resolution to come to a conclusion so that you can utilize your farm for as long as you want to utilize it as a farm. And we're going to try to help you do that. All right.
Mr. Parrish, one more point.
This requires an ordinance, doesn't it? If something happens, can the ordinance say for a single-family residence, water supply to a single-family residence on the Hayne farm? We have the line going through the farm? Just a single-family residence.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just letting you, I need to step out and get ready for a 6:30 meeting, so if there are any other questions regarding zoning, now's the time. Otherwise, if you want to continue discussing this and economic development, I think we've already discussed some of it, but what might some of the zoning options look like?
Okay, we'll do.
All right.
Thanks for coming this evening. Okay. Parrish.
If I can summarize what I'm hearing, it's a very emotional issue. There's a control issue on both sides, and there's a lack of trust. Government can change its ordinances anytime, and the city wants to control that property, what it's used, because they're not necessarily trusting you in the future, because we don't have crystal balls. What world is going to happen to us? And I think that's both sides, and that's the crux of the situation. So we have to either build trust and come to resolution in some way, and make sure that it can't be changed. I mean, that's your position, and the city doesn't want it to be changed. So I don't know, we'll have to come to some kind of resolution in that way. I don't know what the best is right now, but I think this has been a good discussion, and I don't see why we could continue this if we need to, or make a motion. That's up to our committee, I guess.
Well, I think we had a lot of good points brought up, and I think we continue the discussion here. We had some information there on those ordinances and a couple questions from the law department, so I think we can continue the discussion. Mr. Davis?
I have one question that might help. You mentioned that just one house. Make sure I got clear. So what you mean is one house without annexing, and then anything else would annexing? Is that what you mean?
The houses are self-sustaining. The house in the spring, I live in, the spring house, is self-sustaining. I can't support another house.
But just to clarify, so what you said, I think you both mentioned this. So what you're asking for is one of your options to say, I would like the first house and no annexation, and then and then anything more than that, then that's different. Is that what you're saying?
New ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. We got 3 houses on the property. By the time my kids are older, fortunately, Dad won't be around, but neither will my uncle. There's 3 houses there, so there's 3 houses for kids. I can't tell. They could have no kids involved or even interested in the farm at all. I mean, that's our goal for building this house, is to instill in them a desire to be there and a desire to keep the property, which happens at a very young age, all the way through raising them there. That's been our goal of building a house there.
Well, I think what we do is we sit down and
Go around. All right.
some sort of discussion and agreement.
Yeah, yes. I would just stress you're right about the lack of trust. I think from our point of view, an agreement on the meter is easier than an agreement on an entire property. So that would be my point of view.
Okay. Well, again, thanks for all the information and presentation and coming out this evening. Appreciate it.
I'd like to make a motion that we move this to committee of the whole for council.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Whole.
Everyone discussed.
Just not keep kicking it down the road.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
get it on tomorrow night, okay? So that we can give these people an answer, because they want to start this house in 2025. If you have meetings and meetings and meetings, it could be 10 years before they could build a house. I mean, the kids will be too old then.
Well, we can move it for discussion tomorrow evening.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we will put this on the agenda for council of the whole, bring all your information before council of the whole. Now, I don't know if we'll have everything by tomorrow night, but we can get a lot more questions and all this information before all the council. Okay, very good, thank you.
So what is this meeting?
Well, we'll move it to council of the whole so that everybody at our
weigh in.
council of the whole meeting tomorrow evening prior to city council can be involved in the discussion. And we'll get, I guess, copies of this information to be sure that, if you have this electronically, if you could send it, we could get this information to all the city.
Email it, yes.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
So do we come to this discussion, or do we come to a council meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, the council of the whole,
Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock in here.
Yes.
There tends to be a little bit more formal, and there can't usually, in committee, we allow the back and forth. So that would be up to the chairman of the council president, what he'll allow, as far as I know.
Next item on the agenda is wastewater. Just a couple updates there.
Okay, keep it fairly short here. So we have a couple projects getting wrapped up in construction. One of them is a smoke and dye testing project that is pretty much complete now, which will then feed some of our next set of SSO projects, which I'll mention briefly. We have a lining and rehabilitation project that the lining component is going to be done probably mid-February, and then and we'll see some of the work continuing into the spring for this lining and rehabilitation. We have a project just starting now, which is the SSO4 manhole. That's actually two locations, one's at Broad and Humboldt, and that's going to be starting construction here 23rd, so just next week. And then that's supposed to be completed by the end of January, so that's a pretty quick project for one of our SSO projects. So, and then ones that are now for the next, starting design for this next year, there's some money in the budget for some continued SSO work to make sure we continue to reduce the SSO as the discharge of sewer into the environment. So we're trying to reduce that, different corrections for that issue. There's a potential, there's money in the budget for a master plan for the wastewater treatment plant that would be involving some sort of consultant to do some work on that project. And then just potentially some minor projects like some manhole sealing and things like that. So that's kind of what's looking forward to this next year, just depending on staffing and prioritization and all that stuff. So that's what's on our radar screen.
All right, thank you. No questions? We can, question, okay, move on. Then there's no stormwater report, correct?
Right. The next Stormwater Commission meeting will be scheduled prior to our January Public Service Committee meeting. The normal date falls on a holiday, so whatever
We'll have
is
to,
decided here tonight is when we'll schedule the stormwater meeting.
Next item up there is the EV charging rate analysis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I included in this month's agenda packet basically a summary of the analysis I performed on what rates make sense for our EV charging station after attending a meeting with NOACA. The meeting with NOACA clarified what type of costs could be considered under the pricing scheme and what items couldn't. So, for example, the replacement cost of the charging station, which we estimated at maybe $200,000 to $220,000 after 10 years, or about $180,000 after 5 years, that cannot be a consideration into the cost recovery method that we use, because basically that money was provided to us. It didn't cost us anything, and I guess that's just the rules from the federal pass-through grant. Having said that, the analysis really has two parts to it. One is, okay, here's what the rates would look like if we're just talking about recovering our costs, which appears to be what's required of the station. And then secondarily, I included kind of a comparison of market rates in Northeast Ohio to provide some additional context. Probably the easiest place to understand all of this is on page 6 of the agenda packet. And at the top of that page, there's a section Wadsworth Analysis Rate Table. And really, what the analysis did is it evaluates the cost per kilowatt hour for the station based on a combination of warranty options and cost recovery periods. So of the two tables at the top of this page, the top table basically assumes that whatever we paid for a warranty, if anything at all, would be recouped over 5 years. In very simple terms, if we spent, $15,000 on a warranty, we'd assume that $3,000 of that expense was in each of the 5 years. The table below that uses the same costs and combinations, but it assumes that the entire cost of the warranty, it was our goal to recover that in the first year. In essence, the simplest way to kind of summarize the results is that based on our costs, it appears that 35 cents per kilowatt hour is an appropriate rate for recovering our costs. Now that's actually, that rate actually assumes that we paid for the highest maintenance warranty, which is the performance warranty. But if we chose not to do that, I believe there's justification for continuing to charge the 35 cents with the understanding that that's basically building a little bit of a reserve that would pay for vandalism or damage or somebody, car hitting it or things that might be come out of pocket costs if we did not have that warranty coverage.
Now, just to be sure, the basic warranty we have for 2 years included in the price right now. So when we're looking at extended, it's for year 3 through 5.
Yeah, so there was some concern, with NOACA not providing any warranty. When we went to the meeting about 6 weeks ago, they clarified some things, and I think part of that was because so many of the grant recipients had the same understanding that we did, which was, hey, we thought you were covering some stuff here, and now it seems like you're not. So my understanding is that NOACA has agreed to pay what would amount to about $2,724 to provide the basic warranty for all of the stations for 2 years. So that $2,724 would be what they're paying on behalf of Wadsworth. And the difference between the basic warranty and the performance warranty is that the basic warranty basically covers but basic warranty is if the equipment were to malfunction or break down, it would be covered within certain parameters. They would pay, I think for a couple hours of technician drive time and some other things. But think of it as just if the equipment malfunctions. The performance warranty covers that, although there's more liberal limitations. So, for example, it wouldn't be limited to just 2 hours of technician drive time. But it also covers vandalism to the station or repairs if the station were damaged by a vehicle. Something happened, a car backed into it or something like that. In between all of that, there's kind of this middle point where we could piggyback on the 2 years of basic warranty that NOACA is paying for, and then for a cost of roughly about $6,000, we could extend that basic warranty for years 3, 4, and 5 of basically the station's operations.
And that would be covered, that's the 35 cents that you have in there as well?
Well, no, the 35 cents would be if we purchased the performance warranty.
Okay. Oh, that's, okay, that was the high end.
Now,
Okay.
there's a couple things here. One is, what we don't have is any actual data on what usage would look like. What we asked of NOACA and what they finally furnished was their estimates, based on the market data that they had of what they thought each port, how many kilowatt hours it would expend during the course of a year. So we have a station that has 3 ports. 2 of them are standard ports, or basically what's called level 2 ports. And then we have 1 DCFC port, which is basically a fast charging port. They estimated between those 3 ports, roughly about 30,000 kilowatt hours per year would be an estimate of what we could expect the usage to be in its first year. So any of the costs that we look at are being divided over that denominator, and that's how we're coming up with these rates here. If the station were used more than that, the rate per kilowatt hour that we could charge could actually go down. And that if their usage was less than that, we could make the case that that rate should be higher. Moving down that same page where you see a section for Wadsworth rate comparison, of the different entities that I looked at. And there are plenty of places that offer free charging, but those are not considered in this analysis. A lot of those might be a hotel that offers free charging, but you have to be paying for a room at the hotel. So it's not quite apples to apples. But if you look at kind of the assortment of other stations, altogether it averages out mathematically to an average rate of maybe about 40 cents per kilowatt hour. The graph is showing what the kilowatt hour rate is for all of those stations that I included in the survey. And you can see, as an example, Wadsworth being the red bar, that our current rate of $1 per kilowatt hour is matched by a couple of other locations. But beyond that, it's a pretty good chunk higher than what the majority of rates are. You'll see about 2/3 of the way down our red bar, there's a small horizontal yellow line, and that's the 35-cent rate that would be recommended based on the results of the analysis, so you get an idea of how that would fit in with basically the rates of other stations. I'll also point out that on page 8 of the packet, you can see all of the different stations whose rates were used in the sample size here. So really there's a couple things that I want to make mention of. One, once we begin operating the station or commission it, which is basically starting it up, our maintenance, our warranty options basically fall off the table, because they say you got to have a warranty in place if you want it. Once you start without one, you're not going to get it. Again, I think that we could probably justify including within the price that we charge some kind of a reserve to cover potentialities that could come about either because of something that wasn't covered by the basic warranty, or maybe some damage or vandalism that occurred. But we're at a point, we've talked about this for several months now, and I guess my ask of council would be consideration on what we want to do with the rate. Do we want to maintain the dollar rate, knowing that we can't really justify it based on cost recovery, and it may skew the usage results. In other words, the rate may be so high that it gets significantly less usage than it otherwise would if we were to go with a more justifiable rate. And again, I'm using justifiable rate as the term for saying what basically covers our costs as the requirement that NOACA is stipulating.
But you cannot guarantee that we're going to sell that many kilowatt hours per year.
I cannot.
I mean, it's not out there, so we'd be losing money doing a 5-year schedule, possibly.
Well, so
if we buy the big contract, or if we extend the 2-year contract.
Yeah. And now we can change the price that we charge at any time on the fly. Meaning, if council were to come up with a new rate and they were to say, well, boy, usage is only 1/3 of what we expected, we would have the ability to go in and increase rates to recover that.
And that's what I said several months ago, is let's do a 3-month review.
Yeah, so, we could maintain.
But we need to
the
start
dollar
it
rate
out.
And revisit it in 3 months, which was our original intention. But, having some sense of what we're going to do with the warranty is a necessary piece for commissioning the station. Beyond that, we're largely ready to go. So,
I have a question. I observed over the last year that there's been several contract issues with this. Unclear, we didn't know this or didn't that, and others didn't know. So has there been an addendum that's been signed, or that they were going to, what you described, they're going to provide those things? Do we have that in writing, and is it clear and concise?
well, I have it in writing from Dr. Makarachi, who's kind of heading it up for NOACA, just by way of an email. They have not distributed any type of additional contract, although he has laid out specifically what the costs NOACA is covering in the body of that email.
And I would not be want to move forward because of past practice problems unless we had a sincere contract that both parties agree to, that what they'll provide and what we'll provide, because that seems to be part of the issue that we've had in the last couple months. And so I would want that real clear before I would want to move forward and buy or not buy the I'm not meaning to push this down the road farther, but it's been an issue in the past, and I want to make sure that's all clear.
And I
also-
wouldn't be interested in doing a 5-year, agreement.
Well,
This is what we're going to do.
We have to do 3-year.
2 years.
The warranty that
Two
comes
year
with it is
basic
2.
warranty, and then 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, we have
Would
to
be
do
our
a warranty.
choice.
That's what we have to do
The-
prior to paying,
Yeah.
just starting it up.
Yeah.
Now, my second question is, I know the gas station at Route 3 and the 76 has Tesla superchargers. And is Sheetz going to, or any of those others applying for superchargers now in their plans at our intersection?
That I don't know.
I believe that one of their plan indicated the potential for chargers,
Okay.
but I don't know whether that was a potential future
Right.
idea or whether it was going to be constructed.
And so I think we should also, in your addresses, I don't know if any of these are a Tesla charger, like the commercial Tesla charge, so we can see what they charge and see how that fits in that interest rate, that rate also. So if they're so much lower, people won't come. If they're so much higher, they will come. I mean, that's an issue too.
Yeah, typically, with the research that I've done, I can get to the point where I can usually see what type of chargers they have, but they don't often make a distinction between the rate that's being charged, for example, if it's a Tesla supercharger versus something else.
Yeah.
And really, the way that I compiled these rates were to just continually drill down into individual locations, because you can't click on a site where it says, here's what everybody's
Right.
charging and see. It's almost like they're intentionally
Hiding
hiding
it,
it.
yes.
But the rates are accurate as of this weekend with data.
But we don't know if any of these are commercial, like Tesla, because they're.
Oh, I know that some of them are, because
Okay.
I remember seeing Tesla,
Okay, that's what I was
superchargers.
wondering, and that
Yeah.
would tell us a good indication of how we're competitive with the commercial. I think that would be good information, because like I said, they may want to charge there instead of us, or vice versa.
Yeah, so all of the sources here are stations that are charging. A handful of them were other government sources,
Okay.
but I would say by and large that was not the case. So these, in many cases, are private operators.
Well, thank you for that information. That makes that clear. Thank you.
Right, so then we want to wait until,
Just keep it on the agenda.
okay, we'll keep it on there for the next month. All right. Moving on to CityLink, just a quick fiber update project. I think things are moving along.
Yeah.
No real update there?
Yep, they are. So at this point, we've got approximately 400 installations. Installations in Weatherstone, approximately 120 homes. are finished with the final conversions pending from the switch from Tirana to the network. So if you remember in the underground neighborhoods, we're basically taking everybody off the cable, sticking them on a Wi-Fi solution while the old cable's pulled out, the new fiber goes in, and then they'll come back onto the network. So we're pretty well through the bulk of our first underground installation, which is important because we really needed to get a sense of, what kind of pace can we go through the underground areas. We know what we can do aerial because we've had plenty of experience with that. So it's nice to have this under our belt, so to speak. And the conversions basically from the Wi-Fi back to the network, these are not going to require the 2-hour scheduled appointments, basically just notifying customers, and a lot of that can be hooked up in the field. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll have crews working on a couple of cul-de-sacs north of Weatherstone. I think the streets are Bluestone and Edenmore, approximately another 30 customers there. West North Street, Simcox, Tolbert, and Euclid, largely between West and High Streets we'll be working. Grandview, Water Street, First Street, and Mills, also there. Homes on the following streets are ready for installation now: the Bluestone, Edenmore, and the streets that I just mentioned. That's probably the summary.
All right, thank you. Next item under other is just an update on the Tyler, on the credit card fees.
Yeah, so if you may remember, late in the summer, we found out that we were being erroneously overcharged for credit card processing fees for people that are paying, online or through a debit or credit card, their utility bills. When we discussed this with Tyler, that's the new payment processor that, in essence, we were forced to go with because they also own our New World information or accounting system. We went, we talked to them, they came back and offered us a $50,000 credit. We said, send us the information as to how this was calculated, but we are going to independently go through all of the records and try to come up with what we think is the amount that we're owed. I had done that, and it was a pretty detailed and lengthy task, but ultimately I determined that, I don't think we're owed 50, I think we're closer to about 61,000. After I completed that analysis, I gave it to the auditor's office and asked them to go through and basically confirm my findings or let me know if I missed something. They came back and said, no, we've gone through this and we think that what you came up with is accurate. I've since given that to Tyler. Tyler is now going through those same records to see and confirm that, okay, yeah, it looks like your numbers are correct, and I would anticipate hearing back from them really within the next week or so. I've let them know that, our expectation will be that we're going to get a check for, the amount that we've identified. I think really to be fair to them, I think the difference between their number and my number is that I went back to day one and I ran that all the way through roughly mid-September when the change was corrected. I think their analysis started around April 1st instead of late February, and it went through the end of August. So I think it's probably more to do with that I had a more accurate kind of date range that I was looking at than they did. I'm not anticipating any issues at this point, but I won't probably hear from them for another week or so.
Thank you for your work on that. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right, the next thing are the attachments that you have on there from Electric and CityLink for us to take a look at.
Yep.
Other than that would be the next meeting date and time. And I know we have to change that because of the holiday. Would be, and again, I don't know when some of the a couple other meetings are. 2 days later on the 22nd, is there safety on the January 22nd?
No, and safety should be on the 8th.
Oh, okay. Well, so we would normally meet on the 20th. What about 2 days later on the 22nd? Would that be okay?
That won't be good for me, but I'll try and make it work.
Okay.
January 22nd
Okay.
at
How about the Tuesday before the 14th? Is that better?
The 14th, oh yeah, that would.
14th
The
is a Tuesday.
14th is even
Yeah.
better for me. Well, let's go a week, but then that's a week before city council
14th,
too.
yeah, that's
All
a
right,
week
let's go
before
to
city council.
14th.
At 6 o'clock, 5:30?
Right, at our regular time, 5:30, yeah, okay. All right.
30, and I think
I will
it's
enter-
possible our next month too would fall on a holiday. Let me look
Oh.
here.
President's Day is
Yep.
Monday, isn't it? Or is it-
Yeah.
Looks like it would be.
So I don't know if we would want to also plan that.
Well, how
one.
about the
We can do
11th
that
for
one on
that
the
one?
11th, yeah,
Go
February
the
11th.
week before, the 11th.
Yeah,
All right, we
okay
can do
with
that. We can set that now.
Plus, I think it's better to meet a week before council meeting. That way, if there's something has to go to council, it gives you guys time to get it put together and everything.
And, you know, we had a couple of that tripping over dates that maybe we'll take a hard look and just change it permanently if that works with everybody else's schedule, that previous Tuesday, but,
Yeah,
all right, very good. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second. All right, we are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.